Welcome everybody. My name's Scott Hebbard from Spark Systems, and today we're going to discuss creating custom documentation in Enterprise Architect 16. So custom documents in Enterprise Architect allow you to mix your own graphics, logos, policies, and text with sections of content that's dynamically generated from the model. So you can start with a provided template or your own base document that you've created, or a simple empty page, and then you simply drag and drop content from the browser where it's needed. So at the end of the webinar today, I hope that you understand how to access custom documents, how to edit your own reports, how to add dynamic content, and maybe get a brief understanding of some of the templates that we're going to use today. Now, there are many more templates than I can cover in a webinar, but I'm going to show a few, such as a template for a software requirement specification, to show you how it all works and how it fits together. The other thing I'm going to try and do is I'm going to use some examples from the EA example model that ships with every copy of Enterprise Architect, so you can try things at home. The webinar will be made available on sparksystems.com and on the YouTube site, so you can go through it at your own pace. So we're going to start by looking at a very simple custom document that ships with the EA example model. So this very simple example can be accessed by simply using the help file, opening up the EA example model. And there are a number of different EA16 examples. So custom documents appear in the toolbox and can be dragged onto a diagram. You'll note that on the right-hand side, we have our custom document that automatically has created a table of contents. And on the left-hand side, you have a couple of templates. Now, all we've done is dragged elements onto our document from the browser, and we've dragged managed users and some legal and obligate content, and it's automatically created those for us. So the next thing we're going to do is have a quick look at the help so that we understand how you can find out more about how to build the various custom documents and how to access them. So once again, using the start ribbon, we're going to access help, and we're going to select model publishing followed by custom documents. Now you'll see that you can simply drag from the browser to your custom document. And there are a number of different sections, including a title and logo, table of contents, and the dynamic content, which is what we're interested in. So custom documents are a variant of a linked document. They include ad hoc elements such as diagrams and packages. You can tailor boilerplate text to meet your needs, so you can add your own text and modify it. And you can add additional images, tables, charts, and glossaries. And in this webinar today, we're going to show you how to add glossary terms, how to add titles and logos, how to edit those logos. And we're going to use the Spark Systems logo, but you can modify your table of contents and automatically update it. You can drag items such as requirements onto your document, and it will automatically create a report. You can drag use cases or software systems. So one of the great things about custom documents is you do have this drag and drop functionality. So you can easily edit text and you can apply templates and patterns with ease. It allows you to make sure that you can keep reports up to date with model changes, and you can dynamically refresh report content. So if you create something in Word using a traditional approach, then the minute you hit print, you know that report's going to be out of date. So one of the advantages of using dynamic content within Enterprise Architect is that you can simply right-click and say update model content, and you know that your report will reflect the most up-to-date information in the report. So in order to do this, we use dynamic content, So you can drag and drop an item onto your custom document as dynamic content. You can select one of the options in the insert as field. And if you accidentally add wrong content, you can delete that section, or you can even update that section. So that's really quite beneficial. You can see there are a number of different templates available. So you've got a model report, you have project issues, a project management report, a requirement report, and all of these ship with Enterprise Architect. So this can literally save you hundreds of hours because you don't need to create the reports. You simply drag the content from the browser onto your report and it automatically gets created based on the template you've selected. So let us create an SRS or software requirement specification using Enterprise Architect. And I'm just going to base it on content from the EA example model so that you can experiment and try your own. Now, the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to set a perspective. And Enterprise Architect provides perspectives to help change the way you view content within Enterprise Architect. So to ensure a modeler can remain focused and concentrate on the role that they're performing at a particular time, perspectives have been created to bundle all the features, including the modeling languages and example patterns, into sets or perspectives. This allows a person to effectively change roles and focus on a given perspective, and it allows you to quickly switch hats, but it also makes the user interface much easier because instead of having hundreds of templates, you can just focus on what we want. And in this particular instance, we're interested in publishing. So I'm going to set the perspective to publishing and go down to document publishing. So now instead of having hundreds of templates, we just have a few basic publication templates that we're interested in, such as a solution architecture document, a system requirement specification, and a use case model. So I'm going to select the system requirement specification and select create model. And you can see under the custom documentation tab that it's automatically created this report for us. So we have a generic logo, we have document history, a table of contents that's automatically generated, a whole lot of boilerplate text and static text has automatically been generated. So you can create an SRS with Enterprise Architect to save time, and then you can edit this custom document to add content that's relevant. So you can add your own logos and styles. So under the edit ribbon, I can simply insert a logo. I can resize and change that logo so it suits my needs. I can modify text, and I can of course modify fonts and colors so that I can use a corporate style guide so that all of our reports meet company or corporate guidelines with respect to style and color. You can see I can insert the date and time, and being in Australia, we do day, month, year, and often when we're producing reports for other places such as the United States, they do month, day, year. So there's a number of different formats that are available. I'm going to provide a bit of information about what a SRS is. I'm going to provide some document history, including version history, my name, title, and you can see it's very easy to make changes to text and to font and to insert pictures and to insert section breaks and page breaks to lay out the document exactly how you want it. Now, the next thing that's really cool is the dynamic updates. So you can see that there's a section here called requirements, and I'm going to drag manage users from the browser, and it automatically brings up this dialog. And this dialog allows me to insert as dynamic content, and it provides a number of different document templates to choose from. And you can see some of the ones listed include project issues, project management report, Now there's two types of requirement reports. There's one that has details, so that provides details about every single requirement in the package. And then there's a summary version as well. There's also a specification manager list and many, many more. Now, not only can you use the templates that ship with Enterprise Architect, but at the end of the webinar, I'm going to show you how to very briefly create your own template, so you can have your own custom templates in here, and you can modify those accordingly. So I'm going to select Requirements Report Summary, and Enterprise Architect automatically creates a summary of all of my managed user requirements and puts it in my SRS document, and they're all built and ready to go. Now, what's really good is if I have a look at managed users and I select perhaps this requirement, manage user accounts, and I want to make a change. So let's say I want to change the name of the requirement to manage the user accounts. I can then save those changes. Now, in a traditional sense, this report would now be out of date and will be wasted. But because we've used Enterprise Architect, we can simply highlight the section and we can update that dynamic section. And if you have a look, now that the change that we've made to that requirement is now automatically reflected in our report. So I just want to hold there for a moment to talk about how important this is, because in lots of traditional Office settings, people will create a report, they'll type the report from information that they've gathered from Word documents or Excel documents, and the minute they hit print, that document is out of date. And what's really powerful about this is that this report can automatically be updated, and all the sections can be updated to reflect any changes in the model. This can also be made available using tools such as Spark Systems Prolaborate or WebEA, so it can be made available, the report can be made available online so people can consume it instantly. And it allows you to dynamically update things. The other thing that's worth pointing out is that we've been able to create an entire system requirement specification with detailed information about the requirements for the managed users section, and it's only taken a couple of minutes. So it's really quite a powerful time saver, and it's very easy to add information and to make updates and to make changes, and for those to be reflected. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to insert another page break and lay out the document. I want to insert some information about stakeholders, so I can just do a very simple search for stakeholder information because I know it's listed somewhere in my document, and there are a number of packages listed here, so I can just right click and automatically find those items in the browser. So I have stakeholder interests, and that's what I want to include in my report. So I can jump across to my custom document. I can drag and drop the information that's relevant, and then I can select the appropriate diagram report and automatically produce that. Now, before I made a change to some text, so the title of a requirement, and shown that that could be updated. But in addition to making changes to text, I can also make changes to diagrams themselves. So I can change the color. In this particular instance, I'm going to add the notes field to provide a little bit more information. I'm going to change the layout of the diagram. I'm going to change the color of the element itself. So under layout, I'm going to select a new color. That red looks a bit ordinary, so I'm going to select a slightly nicer palette. I hit Control S, so I save the changes to my diagram. And now I can go back to my report, double click it, and I can update this diagram. So I simply select the element and I can update the dynamic section. And so now you can clearly see the change in color, change in layout, and the change in font. So what we've been able to show so far is that you can create a custom document. Custom documents are available in a toolbox and can be dragged onto a diagram, and they can be stored in the model. They can be shared via things such as WebEA and Prolaborate. You can easily make changes to the font, to the color, to the text. You can change a boilerplate text. And so the reports can contain boilerplate text and dynamic content that gets generated from the model. You can very easily highlight sections to see where that content is. And you can update those sections instantly, making it very, very easy to ensure that your report is always up to date and reflects any of the latest model changes that you have available. So next thing I want to look at is publishing. So it's you can easily save and publish your reports. So there's options available from the document edit ribbon. You can save your reports as PDF, DocX, HTML, RTF text, and Unicode text. So there's lots and lots of options depending on what standards your organization use. And when you're on any diagram, you can just press F8 or function 8 key, and it'll bring up the publish dialog. And so for example, if we bring up our document, we can very easily just go File and Save As, and we can now export this to a HTML, so it can go on an internal website. We can save it as a PDF document, docx document, and we can then distribute those files, double click them, open them, and view them in a web browser and in Microsoft Word or LibreOffice Writer or Adobe PDF. So here at Sparx, we use everything in EA and view it in EA, but we do provide the ability to publish these in formats that make them easy to distribute. So the reports are easy to create, easy to edit, easy to modify, and you can, of course, manage these custom templates. So I've shown you how to update things, but I want to talk about some of the concepts that allow you to manage your custom templates, including changing the template, highlighting a section, updating a dynamic section, being able to find that particular content in the browser, and being able to delete the section. So all of these options are available to you, and you can make changes accordingly. So the first thing that we're going to look at is being able to change template. And so we can do that by simply selecting the item and making the appropriate change. So here we have our system requirements specification, and we can scroll down, and rather than having to scroll through a 100-page report, you can simply select an element and you can highlight the appropriate selection. So here we're going to insert some information on a regulatory basis, and we're going to use a particular template. So I know under project management, we have some checklists. So you might have some legal or HR requirements or regulatory requirements. And we're going to drag it on screen using a project management report. And so our checklists have now been created and have been dragged on screen. When I select this, I can highlight the section. So if I've got a 300-page document, I don't have to scroll through 300 pages. I can just jump to it and highlight the section. I can also change the template. So if I decide I didn't actually want to use a project management report, but I'd like to try and use something different, for example, I might choose a model report instead, I can change the template, and Enterprise Architect automatically updates my model. So this makes it really quick and easy to make changes and to apply different templates and to see what your report looks like. There are also options available for us to delete sections and to update sections. And you update sections when you make changes to the model and you want those changes to be identified. If you have a large document, it's always helpful to be able to right click and to find in the browser, so you can always find the element or the package that you've been working on and jump to it straight away. And you can find it in the browser, so you can see I'm quickly moving between the stakeholder, manage users, and the checklists in the browser, and being able to jump to those elements quickly and easily. So I can, make changes, and I can view where I got the information from. And so, for example, here we have our checklists, and I can go in and change the color of the checklist. I can make changes and then update those in the report as appropriate. So so far in this webinar, we've shown you how to create dynamic content, how to insert logos, how to change and edit font, how to make updates to our text, how to make changes. So now I'm going to look at a different example, an airport example, to show you how this might work in the real world. So there's been a management request, and they want us to show a diagram report of airport strategy, update a glossary and include it in a report, include a summary of requirements. They want a data modeling report of the architecture description. Management has determined that it's going to take 3 weeks to complete, but using Enterprise Architect, we should be able to do it in a few minutes. Now, this is very common that you'll get a request from management. So here we have our airport ecosystem, and you can see that the FAA has been mentioned, but we haven't actually added that to the glossary. So I'm going to bring up the glossary, I'm going to right click, I'm going to add a new term. I'm going to say that the FAA and the type of glossary term this is going to be is a government glossary term, and I'm going to paste in a description saying the Federal Aviation Administration is the largest transport agency of the US government. So we've now updated our glossary, and that is now saved within the Enterprise Architect model repository. So we have a custom report, and we're going to create a new custom document, and I'm going to call it management report. Now, when I create a brand new one, I can automatically select from a number of templates and use those templates in order to produce our report. So I'm just going to use the mission vision one, so I get a table of contents, but I can modify this. So I can come up with my own headings, my own titles, my own topics, and I can, of course, which I'll show a little later, go back and edit the template completely so that it suits my individual needs. But just to get up and running quickly, I've modified the template, I've included some new sections. I'm just going to drag any element over, and I'm going to select a glossary report, and you can see that the glossary term, including the new FAA term, has now been dragged and inserted into my report. I'm going to insert a page break, and this time I need to add the strategy diagram. So I'm going to add a diagram report, and so now I have my strategy included in the model. Management requested that we include some requirements, so I'm going to grab the requirements, I'm going to drag them onto my report, and this time I'm going to select the project report and choose the summary version and insert that into my report. And finally, we have some policy information that we need to include into our report from our architecture description. So I'm going to grab our architecture description, drag that onto our report, and choose an appropriate template to apply. and management wanted a detailed data modeling report, so I'll do that. Add that now. At any time, I can, of course, update my dynamic content so that it will update the table contents accordingly. And so now I have my report. I can, insert a logo. I can make some changes to the text. So what I want to show is a report that in a traditional sense might have taken, days or weeks to complete. When you have the content in Enterprise Architect, you can literally go through and create that report in a number of minutes. So it's really quite powerful, and the more time you spend in Enterprise Architect, the more time saving and the more your modeling efforts are rewarded. And you can produce reports in a very, very quick period of time using pre-built templates. And of course, you can create your own templates yourself. So that's what we're going to do here. I've selected templates, and you can see we have a value stream template with its package name, an element name, and a few other details. So I'm going to create a custom record called value stream. I'm just going to use a blank template. I'm going to drag the digital transformation information on, and you can see custom templates are listed at the top. So I'm going to apply that new custom template, and so it's produced, some of the element names and a few pictures, and they're all listed here. But let's say I want to now go and update this report and create my own custom report so that the report always includes a logo, for example. So I'm going to bring up my template, and I'm going to insert a report author. Okay, so that will now appear on every report. And the other thing I might do is insert a logo. So what we're doing here is we're building our own custom tailored template, which can be used by members of the organization. And you can, of course, apply fonts and styles and colors and build that up rapidly as well. So now if I update our dynamic section once again, using the new template, the logo appears, and I've logged in as admin user in this particular account, so that's been updated as well. So there's lots of information in the help file about creating, document templates. So you can create new templates, you can save the current template, you can copy an existing template and make changes, you can modify document options, and you can specify, where the files get outputted to, and a number of different options. And these templates can then be shared with other members of your team. So in this webinar, what I wanted to do was I wanted to be able to show you how to quickly and rapidly build a custom document using drag and drop and other options like that. I wanted to demonstrate how to make changes, how to insert logos, how to update dynamic content, how to use some of the various templates. So I used a software requirement specification template, and I used a diagram report template, and we looked at some of the templates for requirements. There are also templates for displaying use cases and a testing report and a number of other items. So I wanted to show how easy it was and to give a real world example using the airport model of how you might get a request from management to produce a specific report, and show you how easy it is to build that up. So what I might do is I might now jump to some questions, and I'll see if I can answer some of these questions. There's a question from Jennifer saying, will this session be recorded? So yes, the session will be recorded. I usually try to make this session available on the Spark Systems YouTube site within 24 hours of the live event, and then it usually takes a little bit longer. So within 7 days, I usually try to get all the Q&A answered and get the Q&A displayed on the Spark Systems website. So yes, it's been recorded, and I understand that it might be a bit fast-paced, and there's lots of content that we're going through. But if it's your first time seeing a custom document, what's good is that you can walk away seeing that you can create a custom document, you can drag content on, you can use pre-built templates within Enterprise Architect, and you can rapidly build up a report from scratch using content in your model. Any changes made to the model can be dynamically updated, so your report always reflects the latest information that's stored in the model. And I wanted to show you that it's easy to do, and it can be as easy as drag, drop, and use all of the pre-built templates that come with Enterprise Architect 16. But if you don't like the style and you don't like the layout and you want to change it, well, you can update your own template and modify it and make it suit your needs. So there's information there saying, can we create specific fields? So you saw that I inserted the author name field, and there are a number of different fields that you can create, and you can insert various information and packages. On the left of screen, when I was doing that, there was a whole series of checkboxes, so you could insert diagrams or elements. You could insert a relationship matrix. It's really, really comprehensive. In a webinar such as this, it's not possible to cover everything, but yes, there are a number of different items that you can include in your report, and specific fields, and you can lay out those fields accordingly and insert them into your report. So yes, that can be done. So there's a question from Mario that talks about, is the style sheet and cover page set up? Is that available? So yes, what you can do is you can copy one of the existing title pages that I've shown in the webinar today, and you can make changes to that. You can insert your own logos, you can change the layout, you can insert headers and footer information, you can insert page numbers, you can change the font and the way the table of contents is laid out. So yes, there are a number of example documents that have a title page, and it's really, really easy to make changes to that and to change that style and to edit the template so that it suits your own corporate style guide. And in this particular webinar, I just wanted to show some of the ones that come with the EA example model to show it's pretty easily accessible. It comes with that generic logo, which I replaced with the Spark Systems logo. But yeah, I was trying to, design it to show you that it's easy to get started. I think when it comes to, styles and templates, you can spend a lot of time refining them and making them look great. But a lot of the templates that come out of the box really can help you save time and get things up and running. There's a question there about the custom templates are really interesting, and is there a session planned to go through some of these in more detail? We have done sessions in the past on linked documents and on document fragments and on document templates. I find that these are always quite popular, so I'll certainly take that feedback on board. And you know, I could pretty much do a webinar just on, you know, editing a template, and could easily spend half an hour on that as well. So I certainly will take that feedback on board, and we'll do it. But in this particular webinar, I wanted to introduce people to custom documents, because there are a number of people I'd spoken to that had never seen them in operation before. I wanted to show you the drag and drop functionality that you can just grab a package, drag it onto your custom document, and automatically apply a template. And I wanted to show how some of the enhancements and updates that we've made in Enterprise Architect 16 have made it really quick and easy to build up a report, and then you can go and edit the boilerplate text and insert a few logos and make a few very simple changes to get a report up and running quickly. And my airport example was to show, here's a common request that you might get from management. I want a report with X, Y, and Z in this format, in this color. Can you produce it for me? And to do it very quickly. And if they say, oh, I did say I wanted a summary report, but could you now provide a detailed report of all the requirements? You can update that template and generate something out very, very quickly. And there's some information there about can you recommend some online training. So we do have a number of sister companies and training organizations, many of whom do a lot of work with you know, tailoring and editing templates. I know that Sixforce does a lot of training around Prolaborate and getting some of these documents and reports online distributed via Prolaborate. And I know Spark Systems Australia also does a lot of work around creating custom documentation and tailoring it and editing it. And there's other organizations like Spark CE and Spark Services North America that have all have experience in this. So when I publish online, I'll provide some links to some of our partners and service organizations about training for this, if that's relevant. There's a question here, can we import a template from a Word document? So the template and the structure in Enterprise Architect uses specific fields, so you can't really just get the Word template itself and import it, but you can certainly take a lot of the font and styling and apply those to a template within Enterprise Architect. And there's a few questions about document fragments. And so document fragments are also something that we could have another webinar topic on, and we could certainly discuss in more details. So when I publish the questions, I will provide some links to our help documentation to talk about document fragments and how they work, and talk about that in a bit more detail. So what I'd like to do now is wrap things up. I'd like to thank everyone for their attendance. It's been a very interactive set of questions, and lots of people are enthusiastic and have some great questions, and have requested probably some more topics along, you know, editing templates and enhancing this topic a bit more. So I'm glad you found it interesting. If you don't have a copy of Enterprise Architect 16, you can download a free 30-day trial from sparksystems.com. I recommend you do that. Check out the Spark Systems YouTube page to view this and many other webinars. We also recently had the EA Global Summit, and those videos will be slowly making their way onto the website as well, and onto the Spark Systems YouTube site. So there is literally hundreds of hours of free content that can help you get started with Enterprise Architect. So I'd like to thank you for your time and for attending today. I look forward to seeing you at a future webinar. We have another webinar listed on our website that looks at decision tables, and it's being presented by Phil Chudley, so that will be very interesting. So I encourage you to sign up for that one, and look forward to seeing you at future webinars. Thanks for your attendance. Look after one another, take care, and have a great day.